Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this masterclass. 5 ways to stop losing sales to bad product data. This is brought to you by Start With Data, SKU Launch, and also Product Data Weekly, which is our weekly podcast and newsletter sharing free strategies, guides, and ideas all around product data management. So my name's Ben. I'm the co-founder of Start With Data and SKU Launch, and it's really great to be joined today with Claire.
Hello, hi, and I am Claire. I am also co-founder and Chief Growth Officer at Start With Data and SKU Launch.
Awesome. So we've got a kind of action-packed 20 minutes for you coming up. And just to set the scene, really. So this masterclass is all about kind of challenges that we see in a lot of our customers and prospects around product data, and some basically just to share some things you can do about that. And we know that product data is probably the most important pillar within any e-commerce or digital strategy today. And with the growth of AI and the importance of SEO and product discovery, as we move through this year, it's becoming even more important month by month. And the reality is, and what we see a lot in our customers is no one's really talking enough about this, right? And we always see kind of 3 layers really where product data is failing businesses. And the types of business we're talking about here could be anything from a large distributor or retailer with a very large catalog, right down to potentially a small supplier or manufacturer, maybe with a very small catalog, but lots of channels and localized versions of content. We see kind of 3 ways it often fails. So firstly, we see a lot of businesses where product data is broken. So it's either missing, it's mixed up, or it could just be out of date. And then the second layer we see is invisible product data, and product data that is not available for channels, for SEO, for GEO. And then thirdly and finally, we see a lot of product data that isn't actually built for AI. And that's it. It's not how buyers search today in the old ways. More and more people are turning to AI to discover products. And don't just take our word for it. We see there's lots of stats out there. You can ask ChatGPT about these, but we see some really big things like 90% of buyers will drop a purchase if product information is missing or wrong. We see customers are 3 times more likely to buy from a competitor with a richer or structured product data set. And this is kind of a funny one, but titles will literally just ignore your product if you don't have structured data. And this goes for B2B and B2C, in both industries. So Claire, what are we actually going to cover?
Sure. So what we're going to cover is, most people that are coming to the session probably understand that they have a product data problem. They just might not know where to start looking at what the problem is. So we're going to cover off some real things that we see that are silent leaks, basically, in a sales process due to product data. So the first one that we're going to cover is specs that don't match across channels, missing or old information which is shown to your customers. Your competitors are ranking above you, often with worse products or worse customer experience, but they're getting up there. The data is right but invisible to both the humans and AI. And then we'll look at also no ownership, which kind of takes you back to square one. And then we'll just go over a 90-day action plan that we've used with many customers to kind of get them there. We're going to be covering quite a lot today, so it'll be quite fast paced. But by all means, if at the end of the session you've got more questions that you want to cover, we can do that. So cool. Let's get going.
Let's crack on. All right. So let's talk about the first channel. Claire, I think you were
cool. Yeah, I'll cover this one. So I want you to think about a scenario. Maybe let's say a procurement manager. So they've got two products that they're looking at. They're doing the final checks before they're raising the PO, and then they're looking at a website, a PDF, and then also a distributor portal, and it's different details across all three of those. Let's say the weight's different across all of those. Then they go to another supplier that's got the same product and it's correct everywhere. Which one do you think they're going to purchase from? And I think that it's not because they're going to email you and say, oh, which is right. They're just going to say, actually, do I trust these people? Do I want to do business with these people? So I think that's the first thing with this. It's like, when was the last time that you actually went and looked across all of your different channels to see if you've got consistent product data? And I think it goes for, a procurement manager right down to, just a normal website visitor, that if they can't get the information, they will go elsewhere and often to your competitor. So often kind of when you hear about you've got to fix product data, people think, oh my goodness, it's going to be this massive program that they need to undertake, that they're going to need a massive PIM project to do, a migration project. They're going to need to get massive sign off from the board, 6 to 12 month, and that's not the starting point for this. The starting point is it can just be something super, super simple, as simple as, listing every channel where your product data currently lives and making a note of all of that. And so that's one of the things that kind of we want to challenge you on. It's kind of just go pick 5 products, open all of the tabs, look at the differences, and just audit what you've got there. What you will almost certainly find is that the inconsistencies that are there, they didn't happen because somebody wasn't doing their job properly. It's because they happened because it was updated in one place and then it wasn't, followed through to the other channels. And that's a process failure. That's not necessarily a people failure. That's a process failure. So it's kind of understanding about what you've got going on at the moment. And then it's about creating a master record so that you can actually see what that should be. And look, it could be just starting out on a Google sheet or a really simple PIM or whatever it happens to be, that is gathering all of that information from each of the channels. And then lastly, I think this is something that often gets overlooked. It's that last verified date. We talk about this. We've spoken about this recently on our podcast about data pools, and it's kind of like, when was the last time that information was updated? And it goes the same for internally within your business. Like, do you have a record of when that information actually was recorded? So that would be the first thing, is just open up your top selling products on whatever channels they exist on, find the first mismatch, and then fix it today, and then you can kind of scale that up.
What I was just going to add, Claire, as well, it's like a really good way of like showing people like the impacts. Like if you send like your CEO like an example of the same product on 3 channels and 2 of them wrong, and then you show them the result of when you've done the fix, no one's going to argue with that, right? I mean,
Exactly.
if anything, they'll probably just be like, why were they inconsistent in the first place, or something like that. It's a good way of starting the conversation, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, that's the first challenge and kind of fix for it. So the second challenge that we kind of think about is what we call missing and outdated info. That often comes up like mid sales. So when we say mid sale, this is like during like the product buying purchase. Yeah. So they often like discovered the product, but they're in the buying process. And this is particularly true. Well, this is true in B2C and B2B, that if information's missing, particularly if it's like a technical product. I don't know, like for example, I don't know if you were shopping for like a pushchair technical characteristics of a pushchair are like really important, particularly like dimensions and things like that. And if that information isn't visible, the logical next step is often to like ask a question or email in or pick up the phone. You know, if you've got a particular like retail in mind or distributor that's, you know, good price and that sort of thing. But the reality is, if you create that amount of friction within the buying process, often customers will literally just go somewhere else where they can find the spec, right? Because it kind of comes into that trust thing again that Claire was talking about. So really the fix for this, again, it can be quite a simple thing in terms of proving the value. Most businesses will be amazed at the volume of intelligence they have about product queries. It's just nobody's connected the two sides of the business together to actually, I don't know, like go and ask your sales teams or your customer service agents for records of buyer questions relating to products, right? And if you to be honest with you, with AI now, you know, in terms of like the harvesting of this data into an AI to then surface the intelligence is actually pretty straightforward if you use like Copilot or Claude or whatever you use in your businesses. The first thing is to consolidate all the kind of buyer related questions about all products, right? And then the second thing is to like start looking at the different questions that come in from those different channels, and basically go and start looking at the products and try and understand, look at the product pages and see if you can answer the question from the data on the product pages. And if you can't, it's very unlikely that your customers will be able to answer those same questions. So the next step then is to then write the missing answers, right? It's literally, you know, add an FAQ section to your product pages, or add information into the descriptions, the features, the specs, using the same sort of phrasing your customers use. And you got to make sure that obviously that's, you know, those updates are done across the different places that your customers see this data. And then finally kind of set a monthly review, really. And this can be like an ongoing thing. So if you have a feedback loop from your customer service teams or your sales teams back into your data management, your product data management, you could literally weekly pull in your last maybe 20 inbound product inquiries, check the themes, add them to the listings, and this could be a recurring thing. And this also has like massive benefits for some of the other things we're going to talk about a bit later on. Doesn't it, Claire? So
Absolutely, yeah.
You've got to go and talk. This obviously involves going and talking to some of the other teams within your business, right? The coal-face teams.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I think customer service is such an untapped kind of resource of product knowledge, basically, from what customers are asking, what they're complaining about, often what the returns really mean, I think is the other thing as well. So it's not only just what you're missing out on sales, but it's also the returns that also come back as well that is costing the business money. That, you know, clicking one particular, you know, drop down menu, it's like, yeah, but what does that mean when you've actually spoken to the customer? What was the problem? So yeah, I think, yeah, that cold facing is super important. Cool. So number 3 is those pesky competitors ranking above you, often with worse products. And we've seen this time and time again. We've seen both some of the businesses that we've worked with where they're actually, even if they're selling the same product, but they are probably a worse company. I don't know how, but like, you know, their customer service isn't as good. They don't have as much brand recognition, all of that, but they're not actually ranking, their competitors ranking higher than them. So there's probably quite a few people that are attending today that know this kind of scenario very well. They can kind of, you know, think about, is there somebody out there that is selling an inferior product to you, or the same product but they're an inferior business? And if you were to go and Google that, you know, that particular category or, you know, that particular product, and they're above you, it's probably going to be a yes for many people in here. And they're not winning because Google likes them more. They're winning because Google actually understands them more. So they're, whether that's because their data is structured, the questions that they're answering on the pages because of the way that their product data has been formatted or set out, all of their attributes are filled in. And this is the world we're in now. Product data quality is what's getting you in the game, and product data is determining whether those people actually ever find you. And that's a big shift that we're seeing. It was always about, Google understanding your brand and all of that, whereas it really is now about understanding your product data and your product data quality. So it's only going to get more with AI and the use of AI searching more. So this is a really important one to get there above your competitor. It's a real competitive advantage if you can nail this. So one of the things that we've done is we just get businesses to run a competitor gap audit on your top 3 keywords. So who's ranking above you, compare, the word count, spec count, structured data, image count, review volume, see where you differ to what's ranking above you. The other thing is structured data. So, we've been talking about this for months and months now. I think people are starting to kind of understand it. It's structured product data is how Google and AI will understand your products. So if you're, let's say you're using ChatGPT and Perplexity, it's got to have the context to be able to understand what the product is. And structured product data is one of the things that, it's the lever that you have. One of the other things that we're seeing people getting ranked really highly is giving like full answers to questions. So it's giving that context. So it's like, what's the best, whatever your category is for whatever they're meant to be using it for. So if you can answer those questions in your descriptions, you will rank higher because ChatGPT, Perplexity, all of those tools understand it. And so, make sure you're actually looking at all of your descriptions. Things like difference between X and Y, this is ideal for all of those kind of phrases, it'll pick up on. Building long tail product content comparison use cases, FAQs. There is no excuse now for businesses not to be doing this with the tools that are out there. Like writing FAQs for products is like dead easy now. It should be just a given for every product page. And, again, AI tools love that specific authoritative content. We see it in our own services business and our website that getting ranked because of the authoritative content that we have on there, the FAQs that we have on pages, all of the specificity of what we're talking about, it loves it. So really looking at those things. And then collecting structured reviews with specific use case language. So this is a really easy thing to, rather than just asking, what do they like about the product or whatever, but asking them how they're using it and what specific feature that you can then pull back into your product pages is really helpful.
Yeah, I think we probably talk enough about social proof and that side of product data and reviews and FAQ content from customers. But it seems to like it, doesn't it, Claire? Like, I guess Absolutely. Just like it likes case studies, right, for service businesses.
Yeah. So it's social proof. Yeah. Okay, so this kind of leads on to what we were just talking about, but it's just driving home that point that if you could have. I'll tell you about. So we've worked with some product data teams, and they've worked really hard to get their product data right. They've got their specs accurate, their descriptions are really thorough, And there's been situations where it's not actually about that necessarily. It's actually the presentation of the data that the AI still can't understand. And so it's actually two things. It's humans who can't understand it because there's so much fluff on the page that they don't actually know what it is that they want to buy. And then it's also the AI that can't read it. So it's a two layer thing. Um, yeah, I think the stat is buyers spend 8 seconds scanning the listing, and AI tools spend 0 seconds on an unstructured page. That's just how it's working now. Um, what, I mean, this might sound a bit crazy, but you could do an exercise within your business where you choose a listing and then show somebody else in your team 5 seconds, or show somebody who doesn't understand the product 5 seconds, then hide it. And if they can't say what that product actually does, then you're basically failing humans being able to understand it. So one of the ways that you can do that is by your product data title. So structuring it so that you've got the brand, the name, the key differentiator, and variant, so that it's there really quickly able to absorb that from a human point of view, but it's also really important from an AI point of view for it to understand that. Most product titles now, like, it's pretty varied. Sometimes they're like so long that it's kind of like there's so much information in there that you're not actually getting like the key message there. And then you've also got some which are like literally an MPN and manufacturer part number and something else that it's like to a normal person it means nothing. Structured descriptions for scanning and parsing. So I think again, back in the day it was all about, really that whole long-winded descriptions that kind of people stayed on the page for longer and they understood the brand and all of that. It should literally be biggest benefit in plain English up front, and then bullet points of, specs or features or what have you that will sell the product. And that works for both human scanners and AI scanners. The next thing is attributes are where the biggest wins are hiding. So we've seen businesses transform their conversion rate just by filling in every attribute that they can on the platform. Comparison engines will also look at those and pull from those first. So if they're blank, your products won't appear in those results. So it's really important that every structured attribute field that's on your platform, you get it in there, because if it's blank, it just means invisible. And then lastly, I think something else that often gets overlooked is images and alt text descriptions. So most people kind of think about alt text as an accessibility feature, but it's actually also product data. So, AI tools read those. If it's something that's called product image 3, like, that can also be, you're leaving kind of that signal on the table for the AI to understand what it is. So you could describe what's in the image, mention the spec that it's showing. Yeah, so that's kind of some things that you can do there.
Right. And so the last challenge we see, and this is always this is probably the hardest one to crack, right, is ownership. So if you don't have ownership of product data within your business, you will literally just go back to square one. You can try all these like tactical initiatives, which is often what we see, one-off pieces of work, and then in a year's time, it's all back to where it started. Why does this? Why does this usually happen? Um, the reality is like I think we talked about this on our last podcast. Actually, like product data touches many different teams and parts of your business operation, and um, you need to face into that reality, right? It's like a multi-discipline, multi-domain problem within businesses, and you need buy-in from all the different departments, because you could have someone upstream fixing all the data, but if that data doesn't actually make it to any of the channels, we actually have a customer recently, didn't we, Claire, where that was the case, where they'd done a big enrichment project, and then for some reason technically it just hadn't reached it downstream onto their website. That's just a failure of ownership and coupled with process, really. This is tricky. It's a tricky thing to do, but like, I guarantee you in your business there is someone that could be a product data owner. So we're kind of inventing a new acronym there, but it's like a product owner for product data, right? And it's a person, it's not a team, and they can be the ones that are accountable for product data. And in a very small business, it could be you, or, if you own your business, whatever. In a much bigger business, it's kind of like the best people we've seen. It's like people that kind of operate in a cross-functional way, that kind of have really good network across the whole of the business, that often have been there quite a long time, and have, they know everyone from like sales to customer service right upstream to supplier onboarding and category management and all of those sorts of upstream teams, right? So that's the first thing. You're going to need to find this person, give them that autonomy, and then really it's about like creating a kind of policy, right? It's a policy, could be like a kind of workflow. It could be a process for, let's take the customer service feedback example. Where does all that go? Where's all the customer feedback about products go in order to improve the listing quality? Well, it should probably flow through this person, right? Or at least a tool or a process with that person. And you need like a governance process to deal with those requests. And this doesn't have to be like some massive overindulgent governance thing, where it could just be an inbox. Literally, it could just be an email inbox, with data requests and things that come in, an Airtable, a Google form. It just prevents like change to data and updates to data without it being in a governed process. And then really, you want to start looking at a bit of a kind of readiness score or a quality score, because the only reason you can measure if this is actually working is by like looking at the improvement of KPIs, and I think we're going to talk a bit about that in the end. Really, like, if you get a basic process in place for governing your product data, and that's kind of owned by somebody within a simple process, you'll have a way of actioning it like on an ongoing basis. So you could go away and just write one sentence naming who owns the data, accuracy at your company. If you can't write that down, then you probably need to go and find someone that can do that job, basically. All right. So just to recap, we're kind of at the end of the challenges. So I think just to recap on the challenges, the first was inconsistent specs across channels. So that's kind of creating a master record, getting all those channels consistent. The second is the issue of missing and outdated product data. So you need to be able to answer every buyer question and really keep your data current. Third challenge was around competitors outranking you, that Claire discussed. So this is all about structured data, schema markup, creating geo content so that your listings are better quality and more intent and relevant based than your competitors. Fourth was unreadable for humans and AI. You could do that great 5-second test that Claire mentioned. This is all about attributes and structured attributes, structured descriptions. And then finally, no ownership. If you can go and appoint this kind of product data officer or owner, product data officer, that would be a good one, wouldn't it? Maybe we should call it that. Build the system and then, give them a badge. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So what we wanted to do was just do a bit of a wrap up now, because we want there's a whole bunch of tactical fixes. So the idea here was that all 5 of those areas you can apply tactical fixes to very quickly. You could do it in a week. You could do each of those things in a week, like technically, probably on your own. But what we just wanted to highlight, that if you want to do like a proper strategic change here, we've got a 90-day action plan, right? And this is a method that we apply when we work with our customers, right, on these data improvement programs. So I'm just going to really quickly talk you through the three phases. So the first phase is all about like agreeing the targets and gathering data. So when you're doing a product data improvement project, you need to define the KPIs you're actually trying to improve, right? And this will be completeness, accuracy, time to list, return rate, customer inquiries, like all of those things that we discussed earlier, kind of putting some real KPIs around that, right? And you will measure the improvement of your product data against these KPIs, okay? So you can do that, you could probably do that in a week, if you've got the right people in the room. Then after that, what you need to do is go and basically consolidate all your product data sources, okay? So this is putting everything into one place. It could be, all of your ERP sources, your legacy data, your supplier spreadsheets, your marketing assets, images, manuals, your SharePoint drives. Big exercise, but at the end of the day, right, unless you know what you've got, you don't know what to fix, okay? So, there's a big consolidation exercise. So that's the first phase. The second phase is then building what you're actually going to enrich or improve against, right? So if you don't have a defined taxonomy and attribute model for each of your categories, how do you know what you're actually trying to fill in? And there could be a big improvement you could do here and now in the volume of attributes that you need to create and the definitions of all those from the sources that you've identified, right? So we in our business, when we work with customers, we do like the taxonomy, which is kind of the category tree first. We classify the products, and then we define the right attributes for each of those categories, okay? And once you've done that, you can then start to look what's missing, because you've got all your sources, you've got your new or your existing attribute schema, and you can start looking at the gaps in all the attributes within that, okay? And that will really be the thing that determines then how you're going to fill the gaps. So to Claire's point earlier, you might be filling attributes, so attribute values. You might be filling images and media. You might be filling content, descriptive content. You might be filling FAQs, like all of those sorts of things. Every product should have a fully populated attribute model against what you defined in phase 2. So really the size of phase 3 is about how long it takes, how much resource you have to get yourself to kind of 90% plus completeness. You can break this up. So we did a webinar a few weeks ago now, which was all about how do you break up a product data improvement project in terms of how do you order the products you're going to improve, right? Usually we see it done by category, but you can put like a commercial lens on the categories you have, and then you can pick like a high value category to initially do the activity first. It is an ongoing program. I think this is the thing that everyone seems to just miss. It's like it's not like a one-off. Yeah, so it could be a one-off if you've got like 100,000 SKUs to clean. If you're doing even if you're doing 2,000 products, you need to make sure that those products are continuously, onboarded and correctly. This is a 90-day action plan. Yeah, if you want to talk more about, how we do this and, how you structure a project or a program like this, yeah, we'd love to talk to you.
Great. So that is the 5 ways and an action plan. If you want to dive a bit deeper into this, you can book a product data strategy call with Ben or myself, and we can kind of work through what your biggest leaks are and how to get you started on that. You can find our details there. It's actually Clare at startwithdata.co.uk and Ben at startwithdata.co.
Yeah.
Also, we have, if you want some tips and tricks in your inbox every week, we sign up to productdataweekly.com, and we will send you our newsletter every Thursday. And we also have our podcast, Product Data Weekly, which you can find wherever you get your podcasts.
I think, and just someone's just asked the question, will you be sending out the replay? Yes, I think we are, aren't we? We're going to send it to all the attendees and the registered people. So feel free to send it around your teams as well and stuff, and they'll be able to watch the rerun as well. Do we have one more question?
Just somebody
All
saying
right.
that's a great session and some very valuable tips. So that's great. Excellent. All right. Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys. Speak to you
Bye.
soon.